I'm Lisa, and you're with Velo Dulce, the show where we talk women, cycling, and life. Velo Dulce is from the Italian phrase La vita dolce, which means the good life. These are stories from women around the world on finding the good life through life on a bicycle. Hey everybody, my guest today is Katee Gray, founder of Holistic Endurance. She is a performance coach, sports nutritionist, and self-confessed hormone nerd, which is actually how I stumbled onto her. Katee has a serious passion for optimizing athletic and human potential using an integrated approach of wellness and performance. She spent over 15 years racing triathlon. She has a Bachelor of Exercise Science, is a certified life coach, and has a postgrad in human nutrition, to name just a few of her qualifications. She is also the podcast host of Healing Grumpy Athletes, which is incidentally how I found her. If you've seen me hangry after a long ride, or if you felt hangry after a training session, then today's show is for you. Katee, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for a great intro. That's awesome. Were there particular podcast episodes or articles that you stumbled across that you were like, that's me?
It was a lot of them, but I think I found a blog post of yours and I was like, wow, I have to speak to her, because I kind of figured like being hangry was normal.
Yeah, right. That's interesting.
And it's interesting because a friend of mine was telling me, Lisa, like hormones is actually a really big thing. And it's something I've never even considered. And at the end of last year, I probably cycled more than I ever did in my life, but I was really, really tired. Like I was just tired every day, and I was tired and I was hangry. I felt like a 2-year-old. You would know because you have 2-year-old. So yeah, I just felt like I had to chat to you. But first I want to know, like, what is the story behind the story? Like, how did you get, why healing the grumpy athlete?
Because I was a grumpy athlete, ultimately. I really struggled. It didn't come naturally to me. I was always really fatigued and I never had that zest. And no matter how strong or fit I got, I didn't have that. And this was in pursuit of triathlons, not even long distance at this point. Even in the early days, it just never quite felt right. And then I got into half Ironman training and obviously felt worse. Again, when you're surrounded by that community and that culture, you think it's normal to be hungry, hangry, tired all the time. Imbalanced hormones is like this badge of honor, and I was like, no, this can't be right. Anyway, I reached a breaking point. I couldn't do it anymore. And when you can't do your passion and your love and you can't be around your friends, it hits you really hard. And with an exercise science background and a nutrition background, I'm naturally inclined to dive into the research. And I looked for it and I looked for it and I looked for it, and it didn't really exist. And so I had to pull information from lots of different places. And so I actually stopped working too. I was that bad. I really went through mega burnout and wasn't coping. And so even though I wasn't working, I was heavily researching, and that fed into the research for my book, which is called Healing the Grumpy Athlete. And what I explored through that was respecting female hormones and their fluctuations, honoring that and matching your training to respect those changes, both in a menstrual cycle phase, but also phases of life, perimenopause and menopause, and puberty too. So I've worked with juniors, and that's a whole nother conversation. And so it opened up this can of worms for me. And I had a coach at the time, and I said, look, I've noticed this pattern. I think I would get more consistency and frustrate you less if we programmed my training around my cycle. I had this hypothesis, and he was like, I don't get how that would work. Rah, 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 rah. Just like not on board. Obviously it didn't last too long with them, and I took it upon myself and implemented it with myself. And then it clicked. I just had to embrace the fact that week leading into my cycle, I was no good. My mood was low and my energy was low. And for me to come out of the burnout stronger, fitter, healthier, but also still be able to swim, bike, run and pursue my passion, there had to be this gray area I believe in. Because often if someone experiences, say, amenorrhea or Redd's syndrome, or they're diagnosed with some sort of hormonal imbalance or burnout, they're told to stop altogether. And I've helped many men and women find the gray area where they can still swim, bike or run or lift or whatever their passion is and heal. I don't believe in all or nothing. I don't believe in going hard, and that's possible for some people. When you see people training the house down, racing incessantly, getting away with not much sleep and not eating well, it's not that they're superhuman. It's a matter of when they break down, not if. So we can't put that on a pedestal anymore, because we're seeing, athletes break down all the time. And so, that really lit a fire in me. And my path to coaching athletes was pretty serendipitous. It wasn't something I intended on doing. I lost a friend of mine to the road. He was cycling, and he was a coach, and he was a big influence on me. And the club that I belonged to, where he coached, needed someone to replace him, so they paid for me to get qualified. Obviously had my background, and I started coaching, and I brought this methodology of respecting hormones into that with my athletes. So I've been doing that for a very long time now. And more recently in the sports nutrition space as well, and working with men and women. It started out as mostly women, but it evolved because men have hormone imbalance too, and they need to respect their hormones with their training just as much as we do, but they can probably get away with a little bit more than we can.
That's amazing. That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing. So now there's a lot in that. Like hormones. I mean, it's like you might as well talk about the universe. It's that big. So what are the basic things that influence hormones? I mean, like, can you influence your hormones naturally? Like, is it just how it is?
It's not just how it is. So what you mentioned earlier, you said, I just thought it was normal, right? With the feeling hangry. It's similar with premenstrual symptoms or perimenopause symptoms or menopause symptoms. We've been led to believe from society and community that it's just normal to suffer and struggle and push through. I'm here to tell you it's not normal at all. It's just common, but it shouldn't be. And so, yes, we can absolutely influence our hormones, both in the negative sense and in the positive sense. So you do have full power and control without medical pharmaceutical intervention as well, I might add. There are lots of options before we go down that route. I've worked with some really heartbreaking stories of women who have suffered so much that they have had to have their ovaries and uterus removed in their 30s and go through early menopause. And, and then I'm speaking to them in their 40s and 50s and asking, what did they try before that? And it was very minimal, and it really breaks my heart. And so in terms of what we can do to influence, one, obviously you and your audience are very passionate about mostly cycling and endurance sports. The biggest takeaway with that is moderate your effort. Don't get caught up in what everyone else is doing. Stick to your purpose, your training zones, your heart rate, and your specificity, most importantly. Because when we sit in this gray zone of training, and I'll explain what that is in a moment, we create this level of cortisol, a stress hormone, and it inhibits recovery. It creates inflammation. And while cortisol as a stress hormone can be really positive, it's not quite enough to create change for power and strength. So we sit in that zone 3, which is known as tempo. And I see so many cyclists and endurance athletes, it's the number one thing they do wrong. They spend too much time in zone 3 when it should be majoritarily spent in zone 2 to reduce the cortisol stress hormone impact, reduce oxidative stress, therefore reduce inflammation. And then inflammation is going to play a part in heart health, gut health, hormones, and the flow-on effect. As you alluded to, it's a complicated system.
Sure.
Just because one hormone is high and another one's low, that's not the only interaction going on. It's not that simple. And I know a lot of people like to look at it that way, but it's not that simple. There's so many factors at play. So when you're doing effort and you are putting out higher heart rates and pushing, you want to make sure it's, say, zone 4, zone 5, to really get that quality to build strength, power, and VO2 max. The only time I see zone 3 being intentional and helpful and purposeful is if you're doing race pace efforts, and that should really only be 8 to 10 weeks out from an A race. So you're not doing that all year round. That's critical. I see that as one of the biggest mistakes that endurance athletes make, is because tempo you can sit at for hours, you can, in a bunch, you can hang on for dear life, and you're not completely blowing up, but you're definitely not aerobically just kicking along. And so I think when I consult with athletes, the number one thing, I did a survey and I said, what surprised you the most about the holistic approach? And they said how little I needed to do to gain so much performance improvement.
I can definitely attest to that. Last year I was cycling a huge amount, and this year I just don't have the time. I actually went to do a race, not because I race, but just I participated in a race the other day. And the guys afterwards said, we never thought you were going to be able to do it because of how little training you'd done. And I was like, guys, I promise you, because they are all like old school. They're like, no, you have to train 6 days a week. Like you have to be. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like a couple times a week on a bike is all good.
Yeah. And ironically, like, gosh, imagine if they rode, this is for men and women, 3 times a week, and then strength trained the other 2 to 3.
Right.
The result would be exponential. Body weight or body fat would come down. Testosterone levels would go up, which is beneficial for men and women, you know, and the results flow from there in many ways.
Absolutely. So on the show, we have a range from like the occasional cyclist, like once a week or once a month, to semi-pros. But I love what you're saying there, and I really want to highlight that point, is because I found that too, and there's a correlation there also between injury, is when you add in a couple sessions at the gym or whatever, and you take away 1 or 2 sessions on the bike, it blew my mind. Like, just, I didn't have knee problems. Like when I was only cycling, I had knee problems. I was tired all the time. I was hangry all the time. Like it's
so powerful. And I just want to mention that you can't just do any old strength training. It does need to be specific and not the old school way of saying light weights and high reps.
No,
because that's just endurance training.
Sure.
We need the strength, power, heavy lifting. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. So now, okay, I want to touch on a semi-sensitive subject for me, because I'm a South African who moved to Spain. So I went from eating, we call it a braai, you guys call it a barbecue. I went from eating meat like pretty much every day. Now I live on a diet of like bread, wine, and cheese.
Delicious.
Probably not ideal. So tell me the role of food in hormones.
Oh my gosh, we need 10 hours. Okay. It's immense. And I think no matter what I say, the most important thing to take away is that what works for me nutritionally doesn't mean will work for you.
Right.
Everyone's biochemistry and gut microbiome is individual, and you will respond. I personally respond well to a meat intake, and if I don't have it, I feel far worse. Others thrive without meat, and that's so. I think it's definitely relative to biochemistry. There is not a one-size-fits-all rule. If someone is plant-based and not eating meat, it's definitely possible to still be a strong endurance athlete. I will say it just takes more consideration. You do need to put in more effort to supplementation and getting a really well-rounded nutrition to make sure that you're getting 1.8 to 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, which is really difficult to do if you're not considered and planned. The cheese, as an example, can be, if it's cow's dairy, can be quite inflammatory and have a negative effect on hormones, in particular excess estrogens. That's just one example. But again, everything's in moderation. I don't believe in all or nothing. I believe in 80-20. And so if you can get 80% of your week really wholesome, real food, and then a sprinkle of fun for the other 20%, then you'll be okay. And then, maybe once a year, every 2 years, depending how stressful your training and life has been, you might need to tighten things up for, say, 8 weeks to give the gut, liver, and lymphatic system a bit of a reset. And that's definitely individual to what you've got going on in your lifestyle. If you undereat, which again is one of the most common mistakes I see happen with athletes,
right?
They will swear black and blue they're not under eating. And we do a food diary, we can do basic, we can do detailed, and I can see very clearly they're under eating and they think, I'm not hungry, I'm okay. And then lo and behold, we put in more calories, they lose body fat by putting in more calories, they get more energy, they get more performance and more power. And so if you're listening and you've been stuck and you're not sure why, if in doubt, add more calories, because accidental undereating is so common with athletes. You'd be surprised about how much you need. Particularly, I see athletes mostly falling down with protein. Second of all, they fall down with omega-3 content. So omega-3 is a healthy fatty acid, and it's a building block for hormones, particularly pregnenolone, which builds progesterone. So that comes from cholesterol and healthy fats. And so without omega-3, which is an anti-inflammatory fat, we see a lot more inflammation, sluggish recovery, and unable to lose body fat, for example. And then the third most common mistake would be timing of carbohydrates is out of whack.
Yeah, 100%. I did an experiment with my rides. I used to have, once, please do not try this at home. I did a 100K cycle on watermelon for breakfast. That is like a recipe for suicide. You do not want to try that. I thought at the time, I was a little bit younger. I was trying to lose some weight and I thought, watermelon for breakfast before a 100K ride. No, do not try that at home. After that, I started having oats before my cycles, but I still was feeling a bit sluggish and I tried something different. I have eggs on toast before I go and I just feel so much better on it.
And that brings up the whole conversation about fasted workouts, right? They work for some people, not for others. Intermittent fasting, I very rarely recommend for females, but men can get away with it more. Fasted training is all relative to how intense the training was the day before, whether you should do it on that particular day. And so I just really encourage people to get individualized advice. If anyone's claiming that they've got the plan for ultimate success,
right,
I call BS.
You're out the game.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you basically, when you work with someone, you look at their lifestyle, their work, how they eat, how they train.
Yeah, that's a really important factor, I think. Not enough athletes and coaches put into their program planning. If you're working 30 hours one week and 70 the next, your training should absolutely look different. If you have children who have disrupted sleep one week and not the next, your training should look different and adapt to that stress all going on, or you just have less sleep for no good other reason. Or it doesn't even like you could have a highly stressful week without the extra hours. You're probably going to need to see some change in your program. Otherwise, there'll be a flow-on effect, either with poor recovery and elevated resting heart rate, or heart rate variability, nervous system dysregulation, or your immune system might be depleted. There's always a flow on. So we know that consistency outperforms perfection,
right,
on a day-to-day level. So rather than trying to do your program to a T, be intuitive and be like, okay, I only got 6 hours sleep last night. I'm used to getting 8 to 9. Yeah, pull back the intensity today. Do the thing that will support yourself tomorrow. And so then you can be fully ready to go the following day rather than held back. And so if you can always aim for consistency, and so if someone uses, say, Training Peaks, I like to see a lot of orange and yellow, so programs that are mostly adhered to rather than green everywhere.
Right.
When I see green everywhere, that's an alarm. I'm like, you're not being intuitive. You're just following it to do it perfectly.
Right.
And I don't think that's real life.
No, that isn't real life. That's with anything. That is the whole reason why New Year's resolutions don't work. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah.
So there's 2 points that have come up for me while you were talking. One is that, like, so first of all, I think hormones imbalance affect all of us, like whether you're an athlete or not. My sister was telling me the other day, she does yoga. She's not really a sports athlete, but she's, healthy. And she was like, there's something wrong. I just cannot get out of bed each day. And I'm like, that's not normal. Like, that's not normal. She's vegan. So I'm like, you need to look into that. But I also have another friend during her menstrual cycle. She doesn't work. She doesn't train. And I'm like, that's not normal, right? Like,
because she feels so poorly.
Yeah,
she can't.
She feels so bad. And I'm like, this should not be like, and I often think, how many crazy decisions have been made because someone's hormones were out of whack? Like, I'm leaving this job. I'm done with this. Like, actually, you just needed your hormones balanced.
And, to help people feel a little bit better on that point, you're not alone. Like, it's so common that's what's come into my inbox now for years and years and years. And people say, I thought no one would understand, or I thought I just had to put up with this. You don't. There's so much that can be done. I got the most heartwarming message just like 2 days ago. I get these a lot. This is just the one most frequent. This is someone who has, like the friend you described, and what my life used to be like, in that every month I'd have to prepare for this week of feeling so terrible, struggling to work, definitely not training, and not being my best self. And they messaged me saying, I'm day 28 and I don't even notice. Like, I'm just great and I'm sleeping and I've got energy and I want to train. And she's like, who am I? And it was really simple, small tweaks. Like sometimes it can be really simple, and other times we need to get more comprehensive and do lots of testing, and it takes a couple more months. But I really believe in there's a solution.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'm a very complicated case, so I think that's what's driven a lot of my education and my passion. Is it wasn't simple for me, and I had to see lots of experts and practitioners. And while frustrating, it's been a real blessing for my clinical skills and who I can help.
That's amazing. And now you have a son. I mean, you have a very full, like a lot of women, like a lot of listeners on the show, businesses, families, training. Like, how does that all fit together for you?
Yeah, so I've made a choice, say not to work full time. I just know that my love and passion for training, triathlon in particular, really lights me up. It means more to me than hustling.
Right.
And trying to meet this quota that society thinks that I should meet. So I work part-time. I have really good boundaries. When you burn out multiple times, you learn a thing or two about boundaries. And
we have to talk about that. Yeah.
I'm so proud of them, and I'm really good at it. And I think as a parent, it's been very helpful. And so, yeah, I would say my boundaries around work and what space is my own in my mind and in my physical space. I'm quite good at, I'll say quite good at getting out, say on the bike or swimming or running, and saying goodbye to my son Bodhi, even though it's hard. Like I feel I get moments of pang of mum guilt, but I don't let it flow into the session. It's like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I can't be like half in, like riding and thinking about
right.
Things. And if I am,
be in one place.
Yeah. And if I am, like there was a time I was out riding and I was like, I'm not in this. My heart's not in this. And this is all about being intuitive. I turned around, went home and hung out with him, and I didn't feel an ounce of regret. And old me would have stewed on that for days. And so that's how I do it with boundaries and intuition. I work part-time, have really good rejuvenation practices. So I wrote a book on rejuvenation as well. I'm really good at honoring myself with making sure I have time for magnesium baths or infrared saunas, going for walks, foam rolling, booking in massages, being planned and organized is definitely one of my superpowers. So that comes in handy. And making sure that that's all booked in, and I still feel like I get really good quality time with him. That's really important to me. So we'll integrate him into our training. So I'll pop him in the pack and I'll hike with him rather than run. I'm not the most natural runner, so hiking for me is probably better. Carrying 15 kilos is really hard.
Right.
And then in the summer he'll go out, say, on the stand-up paddleboard with my husband, and I'll swim next to them. So he's playing on the beach, and that way it's a family activity. I'm not feeling like I'm leaving him all the time. Recently, I felt like I was finally through the recovery of sleep deprivation, and I felt resilient enough, and I was really patient with myself, even though I was like, how will I ever be ready to go to a swim squad again? I got to a point where I was like, I can do this. I can get up at 5:15. I'm all right. But there was a time where I was like, this is never going to be possible ever again. And so I do a swim squad, and he wakes up when I get home. So again, I don't feel like I'm missing out in any way, and I can give fully to him when I'm back. So yeah, a few little hacks there. And one thing I do with clients that are parents or have priorities with families, rather than say having these long sessions every weekend where they're taken away from, or they choose to go away from their family for 4 to 6 hours on the bike or running or whatever, is periodize or program over 14 days. And it's, it takes a little bit more thought, but that way you're alternating your priorities. And so you give the family and yourself a little bit of a break. So there's a lighter weekend. So it might be a run focus if it's a triathlete, which doesn't require as much time on the bike. And so you can plan more family activities. And then the second weekend is really heavy on the bike. And that's definitely just immersed in training mode, for example. So I believe in hacks. I believe in, if you've got a wedding coming up, that train with that in mind. Like, have a 3-week build into that social weekend, and then adapt and really let loose and have fun during that time. Ultimately for most of us, this is our hobby. And so I really believe in making your life work with your training and not let them fight against each other so much.
Yes.
I think there's a tendency to try and do it perfectly or the way it's meant to be. And I just want to encourage people to think, well, if it didn't look like that, what could it look like? And what would that look like for me?
These points, it's an absolute privilege to talk to you.
I'm so glad. I'm loving chatting to you.
For the audience, I am going to share the links to the books, so don't stress. No, absolutely, everyone should read and follow your work. And I love what you're saying, because it's very contra your approach. I don't know if it's a woman specific thing, but we battle to be in one place, because there's the guilt of not being everywhere, which is actually physically, humanly impossible. But we still battle with the guilt, and which is so tied into that burnout. And I think from a psychological level ties into, I personally highly believe in the correlated psychology, physiology response. And when there's that inner struggle and those lack of boundaries, that's kind of when it all goes pear-shaped. And I love what you're saying about, I've actually got really good at boundaries, and I have made my life work for me. And there's a saying in Spain here, it drives me nuts. They say, it's lo que hay, it's just the way it is. And I'm like, no, guys, this is not just the way it is. And I think a lot of just the way it is like you have to kind of, push through. You have to earn a certain amount. You have to train at every training session. You have to. And that's what when it all goes, excuse me for saying it, all goes to shit. And I think sometimes in life you get pushed to that point where you're like, okay, no more. And I really,
and look,
really
I wish I didn't have this perspective from having to put my body through what I put it through. It would be nice to have this knowledge and perspective without it, but I did have to go to that place. And so sometimes people do have to go on that path, and ultimately we want them to step to another path sooner rather than later. But this message is really difficult for people to take on unless they start to struggle with symptoms. And so and I think there's a lack of recognition of what those symptoms look like with hormone imbalance as well.
Right.
Because of what we've discussed is this culture of it's normal. Normal doesn't mean it's okay. It's just common. And so we need to stop celebrating the
sacrificial
and say, hey, maybe get that checked out. That's not okay. Like there's this normality of having diarrhea all the time, or if running, like that's not okay, and that can absolutely be improved. Like long-term effects of that is not good. Bonking in a marathon, it's like people just say, oh, it's like they wait for it to happen. Let me tell you, in an endurance race or a marathon, if you're bonking or doing something wrong, it's not a rite of passage. You do not have to bonk to finish.
Correct. For those who don't know what bonking in the audience is, it's basically like when you have hit the wall so badly, you have like just run out of every ounce of energy you ever had in your life.
Pretty much. Just you've got no pace, and even food won't make a difference, or whatever you try and put in, you are done.
Yeah, and that is not normal. Like not being able to wake up in the morning is not normal.
Let me think of some other symptoms that would be important to highlight. Like simple ones like acne is a sign that, say, hormones are out. More for men, more weight around the pecs will indicate hormone imbalance. If you're someone that is predominantly storing weight, either love handles, sides of the hips, or around your belly button, that indicates a hormone imbalance, usually with cortisol. If it's mostly on your hips, again, that's a different hormone imbalance. If you're always got heavy legs, no matter what you do with recovery, that can be actually gut bacteria imbalance as well as hormone imbalance. It might be mood, like that you're quick to anger. It might be that you're quick to stress and quick to emotion. It plays out in lots of different ways for people. Gosh, the list is huge. Like low libido.
Low libido, I do want to talk about that for a second, because I feel like that is pretty common. I won't tell you my age, but around about like in your 40s,
sure.
You're just like, I'm done. Like, is that normal?
Doesn't have to be, is the answer. And so similar to puberty, some will struggle more than others with the symptoms and the onset. And so as we come into perimenopause, if you're experiencing symptoms, and I'll touch specifically on libido in a minute, again, you don't have to go, it's just perimenopause, it's the way it is. Whatever.
Right.
There are things you can do to support. And this is, I think, a major gap in the world of nutrition, that this message hasn't got through. Your nutritional requirements as a woman in your 30s are so different to your nutritional requirements in your 40s and again in your 50s and beyond.
Yes.
And so
yes.
At each stage of life, you want to reassess what that looks like and not hang on to what you did 5 years ago and go, why isn't that working for me from an energy or body point of view? So there's things you can do nutritionally, there's things you can do with supplements. The thing that I see having the greatest impact quickly is actually Chinese medicine acupuncture.
Wow.
In another life, I must have been Chinese medicine, or maybe the second half of my life, that's what I'll do. But it's just magnificent. It changed my life when I discovered it. I discovered it for mood-related concerns that I had really young, and was able to be medication-free for the first time in my adult life at 22, thanks to Chinese medicine and acupuncture. So that's how I discovered it.
Wow.
But for hormone imbalance, perimenopausal transitions, menopausal transitions, that would be the place to get really quick results. And even premenstrual, endometriosis, PCOS, all of those conditions, Chinese medicine would be my first go-to, as well as, say, a nutritionist or practitioner for gut health and so forth. Often we see someone suffering with perimenopause symptoms more if they have a highly stressful life, and that stress could be physical stress from training, or it could be mental stress from life, parenting, work, whatever's going on, and their constitution of how they mentally handle that. I don't personally handle stress well, and I've had to learn that over time and coping mechanisms. And so gut health would be the primary reason someone would suffer more with perimenopausal symptoms. In terms of low libido, this can happen at any stage of life, not just perimenopause.
Sure.
But as progesterone is decreasing in particular, that's the culprit. But there are foods that can help support your progesterone, cholesterol-rich foods being one of them. There are herbs and supplements you can take. There are actually nervous system, like breathing techniques to help reduce your cortisol to bring up libido. And when we talk about libido, it's not just about sex and intimacy, it's about vitality and energy and femininity.
Correct. It's about like general life drive.
Life drive, exactly. And so a lot of women just let it go by. It's like, oh, well, I didn't care about it that much anyway, whatever.
Right.
Fast. So they don't do anything about it, but they don't see that it's like this slow creep of energy.
It's like energy leak. Yeah. I love what you said about, because that's definitely happened with me. Like, why isn't what worked 5 years ago? Like, why does that not work for me now? You're like, come on. Yeah.
I sent a photo to one of my clients the other night of my dinner. I have no idea why. This is not a regular practice. And she was like, "Oh, there's a lot of potato on that plate." And I was like, "Yeah, there is." I need really different macro balance to what I needed pre-children.
Right.
I need a lot more carbohydrates these days. I was really comfortable and happy and worked really well on quite low LCHF, and doesn't work for me anymore. It definitely didn't work with breastfeeding, and it's just amazing to embrace those changes now. And so I think I would encourage that more, like stop beating ourselves up and go, like, you're not the problem.
Right.
The information you've been given is the problem.
Correct.
And we just need to adapt and tweak. And it doesn't mean you have to overhaul. Often it's tweaks.
Just
I don't
tweaks.
believe in overhauls and going crazy.
I like that also, because I also feel like when you are out of whack with your hormones, everything feels overwhelming. So now you're like, oh my gosh, now I have to overhaul my life. Like, it's just too much.
Yeah. And it's hard to make rational, straight decisions.
Correct.
And, food's an emotional thing as well, especially if there's social constructs. And yeah.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I feel like I could chat to you forever. This has really been a personal light bulb session for me, so thank you.
Oh, good.
And I definitely recommend to those of you listening, please, I will share the link, check her out, listen to the podcast. Her work is phenomenal. What is your, like, for me, this kind of my takeaways have been around, just do tweaks and really set boundaries and actually take control of how you would like your life to look like.
They're great takeaways. Yeah, design the life you want. And if you work within the confines of an employed role, you can still have some elements of design in your own life. And the other thing is, I would encourage employees to ask for things.
Right.
Like, can I do that walk outside? Sorry, that meeting while walking outside? Can we just, like, do I have to be in front of my computer?
Correct.
Can I take an hour lunch instead of half an hour to go do yoga or a run or whatever it may be? Ask for the things, or a day at home once a fortnight to work from home, so you've got a little bit of extra time for that bath or to get all the training washing done, so you're not rushing everywhere. There's a couple of great book recommendations I want to give before we wrap up. One is Rushing Women's Syndrome by Dr. Libby Weaver.
Oh, I like that. Rushing Women's Syndrome. Nice.
She's excellent. So if anyone's relating to this, like, high stress, high performing, rush, do all the things,
totally, yeah.
That's a great book. And then Sarah Gottfried, any of her work, The Hormone Cure. They were my primary influences when I was writing. And then since my book came out, so when I was writing my book, it was all male content. It was very frustrating. And I saw a statistic the other day. It was like 78%, don't quote me, I might have to correct this, 78% of scientific literature in the sporting field is conducted on men.
Wow,
and
that's crazy.
And so when you try and look for scientific literature related to the menstrual cycle, it's impossible, because I tried to study my master's to do research, and I wanted to study the menstrual cycle in athletes. I couldn't get a supervisor to sign off on it. They're like, no, too hard. No, can't do it. The requirements for that. Yeah.
Wow.
They put it in the too hard basket, and it's a big push up a big hill. I've done what I can in the industry, but obviously it's not enough. There's a lot more work to be done. So anyway, there's another woman, Stacey Sims's work, which is brilliant for perimenopause and menopause. And her research has studied a lot around sodium requirements and how they change with your hormones. I've written some articles on that too, but her work is brilliant. just looking at my bookshelf.
Well,
make sure
I will link to your website. And
yes, I've got a media page with every podcast I've ever been interviewed on, so people can look at all the different topics like gut health or nutrient timing or hormones and dive a bit further into more specific stuff if they want to.
Fantastic. I must tell you, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me. Awesome.
For your energy, for your work. This has really been a phenomenal episode, so thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And please keep doing what you're doing, because it's working and it's inspiring the rest of us. So thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. That's nice to hear. Yeah, it's hard because, I took a break obviously after having Bodhi, and so I haven't done heaps of podcasts. So this is really nice, to get that feedback.
I hope you have been as inspired as I have on today's episode of Velo Dulce. Please share with a friend, rate on iTunes, and most importantly, get on your bicycle, grab a friend, drink some coffee, and here is to living Velo Dulce.